You get a hint of the different things that the different beaks are designed to be used for, which is interesting. Notice the differences. In many cases they're subtle, and others not so subtle. Suggests, which has been suggested before, that like the cont'd experiment, pre-Columbians crossed the Pacific on their rafts. How many colossal adventures would be inherent in that statement? During the 17th century and the 18th century, it was the exploitation by buccaneers and whalers in the 19th century. Pirates, after attacking the Spanish galleons, sailed to their favorite hiding place, the Galapagos. Villamil, which also is the name of the only town, or main town I should say, there is a smaller one, on Isabella Island, first came here to Floriana with 80 prisoners who were granted a pardon if they would colonize with him. Unfortunately, the mix of former prisoners and non-prisoners was so disruptive that the project ultimately destructed, but a noble, ideal venture nevertheless. This is probably a reproduction of the post office barrel on one of the islands. I forget which one it was. It might have been Genovese. But it's where, when you came by ship, you would pop your letter into your loved ones there, and the next ship coming by in that direction, they'd all look through all letters, and they'd take them with them and make sure they got to your loved ones back home. A young man. What an experience that must have been. How many hours, days, he labored in his mind over the things he'd discovered and the conclusions that might be drawn. Norwegians were a very strong element of colonization and brought this heavy iron works with them for the interesting mystery of the death of this lady and others. You can read about it. Photographs often tell so much and belie so much. Always, what did these people think and really think at the time the photograph was made? What were her aspirations? What drove her? Did this rough lifestyle fulfill the ambitions? Or was she merely trapped on the linear line of her own history? These photographs are interesting because from top to bottom they illustrate the change that has occurred in these cities on these 4 islands that have little townlets. Notice Santa Cruz, the largest of them today, almost devoid of any recognizable population. Same thing with San Cristobal to the far left. All of these appear to have nothing. It illustrates the issues, the problems, the challenges, and perhaps the solutions running forward of continuing to occupy these islands, particularly as tourism continues without any kind of controls, prompting the growth of all these little cities we looked at. And yet, the islands themselves, their ruggedness, protect them from too much. Issues that plague the world at large can plague this place but are small enough to be ultimately controlled if it's chosen to do so. Energy, water, air quality. I've seen too many walls of photographs that were frighteningly macabre and disturbing. These are exciting, and my contact with these people has been very great friendliness. They look you in the eye when they pass you, unlike Americans and Europeans. They say hello if you respond, and they say it with several words or phrases opposed to a guttural. And it's the landscape that protects much of this island complex, because it takes a torturous amount of effort to convert any portion of it, it appears, to something usable to man, like this walkway. They're making new lizards. It's a pleasure to walk along this trail because, absent it, it would be one hell of a struggle to get through this landscape, particularly unscathed with bruised and battered shins. My guess the way it's made is like they did the railroad. You start by pouring rock and other debris into the gaps between the big rocks, and once you've got that kind of filled in, you bring in a foot of cement, lay that down, lay the rock down, and then keep moving another few feet forward until you finish. The sendero to Punta Carola, so I think I'll go back and finish the loop I was on right there, and then come back and do this, since there's not much else to do here. A single pretty flower blooms, and occasionally a couple others of these very prevalent yellow ones. They're the largest cactus I've seen on this little walk. Why it's here with its progeny, I don't know. Higher, there are more and more of those big cactus. This, I believe, is a war cannon, a U.S. war cannon, I think, that was brought here to use for practice. Go figure. It's interesting in a strange way because of the paucity of its leafing, clearly indicating an arid environment, but nothing flamboyant about its small collection of sustaining leaves. That I see often in this walkway suggest that the ground underneath either continues to settle or is continually disrupted. This, of course, makes a mockery of everything I said about the difficulty of finding a place to use the land here. It's all pretty flat and almost devoid of rock, for whatever the reason. Whether the soil is deep enough to grow anything, I don't know. And if it is, has it been done? Rocks littered with bird poo, I think it is, suggesting that maybe sometime during the year that's a breeding location. Notice on the face of that cliff down below, and then certainly up above where it's even steeper, there's a great deal more. Monumental statue of Sir Chuck as befitting, but notice how his hand seems to be signaling in that classic fashion to something over his right shoulder. Or did he have an umbrella in there?